Hello everyone, welcome back to another Ableton tutorial. Lovely to have you here. Big shout out YouTube crew, big shout out Patreon crew. What are we looking at today? Well, you read the title. Gonna look at building the Moog Subharmonicon in Ableton. Wow! Full disclosure, I'm not going to completely rebuild the Subharmonicon, but particularly I want to look at the sequencing possibilities and how we could sort of do that inside of Ableton. You can see the rack here. It's a really performative thing. This is the second in a series of videos I'm doing breaking down tracks from my album. The album is called Non-Determinative Outcomes. It is an AV album released May 2nd on Bandcamp, May 5th everywhere else. But the idea behind the album is that the pieces of music is not the final version that you hear on Spotify or on Bandcamp. The piece of music is this. It's this patch. It's the Ableton set, and so I'm making these available so that you can interact with this piece of music not as a listener, but you can interact with this piece of music as a maker. Patreon members can download this entire patch from the Patreon. You can also access it as a one-time post and make stuff with it and release it. Do what you want with it. You're adults, you can make your own decisions. So I thought I'd show a little bit about this patch, and then I am going to show how I built it. If you want to jump straight to the building sequencing part of it, the time code is in the description below. I'm going to turn off this little drum thing that I've got going on here. That's just a little glitchy drum loop. I'm going to turn off the sort of spacey effect at the end here. And let's take a look at what's going on here. So let's bring it back to one oscillator doing one thing. And we'll just use this oscillator here. And we're going to turn off these triggers as well. So as you can see, everything is color-coded. I will turn this off for now as well. Everything is color-coded. These orangey colors are for oscillator 2. Oscillator 2A, 2B, and 2C. These pinky colors are for oscillators 1A, 1B, and 1C. And what's happening? Well, each oscillator has a 4-step sequencer. You can hear this one running through a sequence in the background there. I've got a quantizer on, which is why we're maybe not hearing so many different notes. There we go. Put that in there somewhere. So we can hear this oscillator now stepping through this sequencer that I'm sequencing using these pitches here. Now, each oscillator has a bass tune, and then we have two other oscillators, what are called sub-oscillators, that are being triggered at the same time, that are following the same sequence, but they themselves are different pitches. So I could now just bring in the second of those oscillators. And you can see I'm turning the individual oscillators up and down using these volumes here. A third oscillator. So you can see all of the oscillators are following this sequence here. And we get these lovely sort of evolving patterns. We can change. Let's make it just the first and the second of these two, oscillator 1A and 1B, and I can change the relationship between the notes. We can move this up to, we can make this something super high so we can hear. So that's one of the ways in which the Subharmonicon works, and we just have two of these. We have another oscillator here. You can hear that's doing a different rhythm. And again, we have the two sub-oscillators and the main oscillator. Let's just bring that back to oscillator 1. Now, we also have the sequences being triggered in a rhythmic form, and we can change the subdivisions of that. So what the Subharmonicon is very good at is making complex rhythms by combining two or more interlocking subdivisions of the same rhythm. What do we mean by that? Well, I'm using here the rotating rhythm generator. So you can see I have clock 1 is here. I can change the subdivision using clock 1 is changing the subdivision on the rotating rhythm generator. And this trigger 1 subdivision, this says how many of these clock subdivisions it waits before playing the next instance. So if this was down to 1, we're getting a trigger every quarter note. At 3, we're getting a trigger every third quarter note. Every sixth quarter note. But if we change this to something like 3/16 and this to, let's say, 5, so we're now getting a trigger 1 out of every 5 subdivisions of 3/16 notes. So the rhythms are really undulating and moving, but each time a trigger comes in, it moves the sequence forward, moves the steps in the sequence forward. Let's bring this down so we can just hear. We're getting there we go. Now we're reset. So each time a trigger is done, we move through a step in the sequence. We combine sort of 2 sets of triggers and 2 sets of sequences with different subdivisions and different origins of the subdivision. But each time a trigger is happening, it's sort of opening the filter and the amplitude envelope for both sets of oscillators. That's essentially what's happening. I'm going to show you how we built it. But it's super fun. Super nice to just get these rhythms that unfold. And then I made a little bouncer thing that every now and then... Come on. There we go. We got a little bouncy thing there. So as I mentioned, Patreon members can download this entire set with this full rack in it. Make with it what you want. I'm not going to build the whole rack in this tutorial because there's just a lot of macro mapping, and that's perhaps not so interesting. But I'm going to show you the basic concept. So let's mute that. So this, as I mentioned, is coming from a track from my album. The track is called An Anomaly, either modifies or becomes the default. I made it on the Subharmonicon, the Moog Subharmonicon, and so I wanted to make this available for everybody else, so I built this rack. First of all, let's take a quick look at the track that I'm talking about. So let's start from scratch. let's build that Subharmonicon rack. Okay, so you saw me beginning with the rotating rhythm generator. Let's bring that into a new channel, and now let's bring in an operator in here. Let's turn some of these other ones off. Okay, so we only have one rhythm note being generated and one operator. I'm already going to select everything and press Command G because I want to be doing a lot of stuff inside racks, and I want to make sure that I can do racks inside racks inside racks. We're going to use this rotating rhythm generator to generate our triggers. So you can see we have note C1 coming out, and it's happening on 16th notes. We can slow that down. So the first thing I want to do is to be able to isolate just that note. We're going to use this to send our triggers to the oscillator group set 1. So I want to be able just to isolate this note, and then I want to be able to subdivide it. So it's not happening every 6th note, but perhaps every third 6th note. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in a MIDI effect. Going to bring in a pitch. Oh, come on. Going to bring in a pitch. I'm going to press Command G on that. We're going to group that. I'm going to open up the key selector here, and I'm going to say just want C1. So now this is only going to fire a note through when C1 is hit. I can turn on D1 and nothing is getting through. So we've now isolated this as an individual trigger. So this is the beginning of our chain for the oscillator 1A, 1B, 1C set. I'm going to constrain this to be a C3. I don't want the root note to be so low. So I'm going to move this to C3. Come on, C3. There we go, C3. I'm going to change the range to 0 and the mode to fold. So now any incoming note, it immediately folds that into being a C3. That's lovely. So now let's figure out a way that we can make this only happen sort of every third of these notes that's coming in instead of every single one. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to bring in a velocity. And I'm going to press Command G on that. I'm going to group that. I'm going to open up this here. I'm going to bring in an expression control. And we're going to use the incremental mode here so that every time it receives a new piece of MIDI information, it steps through, in this case, 8 increments. So I've got my velocity here. I'm going to right click, create a chain, but I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to open the chain selector here. And if I move that over here, we can use this to turn notes on and off. So if I was to change this to just 2 increments, I'm going to right click on this, map to macro 1. I'm going to now map the increment to here and set this to be 100. And now we can see it sort of going going crazy. We don't want it to be going crazy. We just want it to be switching between these two. So I'm going to change the range here from 0 to 1. And now it's playing every second note. You can see where I'm going with this. So on the increment device, we can go up to 32. So I'm going to create 32 options in here. 4, 8, 16, 24, 32. And I only need 31 because I have one that is actually going to do something. So I'm going to delete one. I'm going to move this out to 31 over here. I'm going to select all of these and distribute ranges equally. I'm now going to change the range so it goes from 0 to 31. So you can see now we're stepping through each of these subdivisions. So I can control how often that's happening over here. One out of every 5. 1 out of every 3. 1 out of every 14. Let's leave it down here at 1 out of every 5. I'm going to label this subdivisions. Okay, so I'm going to just close that for now. So now I want each time it hits a subdivision, I want it to step through a sequence of notes. So the way I'm going to do that is kind of similar. I'm going to bring in a pitch in here. I'm going to group that. And I'm going to just turn it off for now so it's not letting anything through. I'm going to duplicate it. So we're going to make a 4-step sequencer. It's the way the Subharmonicon works. You could do more steps if you want. You're adults. You can make your own decisions. In this case, I'm just going to do a 4-step sequencer. And I'm going to, again, open up the chain selector, move you to 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to right-click on that, map to macro 1. I'm going to change the range of that so it only goes up to 3. And now I'm going to bring in another expression control. We're going to put that in front of this rack. And again, we're going to use increment. This time we're just going to leave it on 4. I'm going to make sure that's at 100%. Unipolar, map to chain selector. And now I can turn all of these back on. And you can see we're stepping through a sequence. It sounds the same because we haven't done anything with the notes yet. Let's do something with the notes. So I'm going to right click, map to macro. Yeah, let's do macro 5. Let's do it on the bottom lane there. Map to macro 6. map to macro 7, and let's map you to macro 8. Lovely. So now I can move these. There we go. Now we're stepping through our sequence. Excellent. I'm just going to constrain the range of these a bit because I think by default, yeah, it goes to minus 128 and plus 128. Let's just make it go to 48 and minus 48. Okay, nice. So that's that part of it. Now I want this to be able to then trigger to create the subharmonics. We saw how each time it was stepping through the sequence, it was playing a root note, but then also two other notes, but they were also stepping through the sequence together. So I'm going to group this operator. I'm going to just turn that off for now, and I'm going to duplicate it twice. I'm going to put a pitch device in front of each of these. Going to put a pitch device, and I'm also going to put a velocity device in there. I'm going to do that for each of these. Velocity and a pitch. Doesn't matter which way round the velocity and the pitch are going. Velocity and a pitch. Now I'm going to yeah, I could turn all of these back on, but let's map some macros first. So let's open up all of the macros on here because maybe that's going to be useful with this. So let's map you to macro 1, and right underneath that I want the output of this. So map to macro 9, also map to macro 9. So we now have a velocity and a pitch for the main oscillator. Super nice. Let's now do that for the second one. Map to macro 2. Map to macro 10. Map to macro 10. So this could be, oh yeah, this is going to be super high as well. Going to do the same thing for this one down the bottom here. Map to macro 3. Map to macro 11. Lovely. Let's call this 1B velocity, 1C velocity, cool. Okay, so they're right underneath each other. Now I could turn all of these back. Oh yeah, that's loud. Calm down. Maybe actually I'm going to want sort of a master out. So I'm going to right click on this, going to map that to macro 16. I'm going to right click map to all siblings. So now I can probably turn these back on and just turn it all down a bit. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Let's change the range of those pitch devices again, because that's kind of crazy. Let's just go for, let's go 48 again. I'm going to do the plus. The plus first. Nice. So now I can control the individual level, global level, individual level of each of these oscillators. Nice. Nice. And I can control the individual pitch of each of those oscillators. Let's come back to oscillator 1. Okay. What else do I want to do now? I want to make sure that this is like this, because I'm actually not going to use the filters. I'm going to turn the filter off here. I'm not going to use the filter and the VCA, the voltage controlled amplifier, on the operator. I want to do that separately. So how am I going to do that? first thing I want to do is to make this be making sound all of the time. So I'm going to do that using a note device, MIDI note length. MIDI note. I'm going to use a MIDI note. I am using a MIDI note, but I want to use a note length. And I want that to come in before we're doing the pitch for the sequence, which is in here. Come on. And I'm going to turn on latch. So now this is going to hold the note down. Yeah, exactly. This is now holding the note down until a new note is triggered. So now all of these oscillators, these ones are turned down, are making sound all of the time now. Lovely. So what I want to do is create a new VCA, a new voltage controlled amplifier. I'm going to use a utility plugin. Now I just want to be able to trigger something each time this sequence receives a trigger that's going to open and shut that voltage controlled amplifier. So I'm going to use a MIDI effect. I'm going to use MIDI envelope MIDI. Yeah, I'm already. What am I going to do? I'm going to turn the volume right down on the gain. I'm going to make this unipolar 50%. Yes, that's good. Now I'm going to map that over here. So now we can see this is now my amplitude envelope. Nice. Nice. Okay. I also want to do the same thing with a filter. So let's name this. I want to bring in another envelope MIDI. In fact, I'm just going to duplicate. Oh, no, don't do that. I'm just going to duplicate this one. I'm going to call that VCF one. Excellent. I'm going to bring in a filter at the end here. Audio effects, auto filter, VCF, auto filter, voltage control filter. And I want to just use that envelope to control that, don't I? So I can, again, let's go. Let's go mod. We want unit. Yeah, it's there. It's there. It's there. So now we can see and here we can hear each time that a note is triggered, it's triggering the filter here. So how are we doing now? We can control each of these. It's sounding a bit crunchy. We should do something about that. Let's use a scale device. Ooh, crunchy. MIDI effects, scale. I'm just going to bring that in. We're going to need one on each of these oscillators. Let's set it to C major for now. C major. C major. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Looking at 7th chord. There we go. Really nice. Okay. So we have our one subdivision here. It's triggering, and then it's doing all sorts of things with the pitch. We have all sorts of ways of controlling that. How to bring in this dual oscillator version, this dual set of oscillators that Subharmonicon does. Well, I'm going to rename this oscillators 1, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to rename that oscillators 2, and I'm going to move this. So now, yeah, why are you not triggering? Why are you not triggering? You're triggering in there. Aha! You're not triggering because we are not opening and shutting the VCA and the VCF at the end. Now, I can't link more than one modulator envelope to these, so I'm going to have to do something a bit tricky. We're going to do this using a CV utility. I'm going to go to audio effects here. I'm going to bring in CV utility. Where did you go? CV utility. I'm going to drop that in before before those, before the VCA and the VCF. I'm going to come to oscillators 1, oscillator set 1, there you are, and I'm just going to unlink these for now. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to sort of combine a set of values that is then going to control this. So I'm going to change this actually just to remote. We're going to map that to here. I'm going to change that to 50. Now I can map these VCA1 to here. It's not doing anything because that this trigger is not turned on, but I'm going to come in here. This is VCA2 and VCF2. And I'm going to map that to input 2 here. Lovely. I'm going to change the range of that so it goes up to 100. Let's do that on the filter. Let's go and do that on the other two before I forget. Yep. Let's do this for the filter as well. So let's call this VCA combine. I'm going to bring in another CV utility in here. We're going to call this VCF combine. Going to map that, turn it to 100 unipolar. We're going to map that to the filter here. Now I'm going to come back here, VCF2. You're going to go here. Back into oscillator 1. This VCF. And we're going to map that to here. So now if we turn on, there we go. So now we're getting note triggers each time. We're getting note changes, we're getting sequence changes each time a trigger comes in on these two sets of oscillators, and we're also opening and shutting this global VCA and VCF at the end here. So what else can we do here? So what's useful to do right now? Let's bring these down. I think maybe I need to change the names on those down here because, yes. So can you, even with these two notes and without doing much to this at all, it's really quite interesting. It's this lovely unfolding pattern. Let's look at how to get that bouncing ball thing happening as well. So I'm going to now bring in a third trigger here. I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a chain, and we can see the note is F1. So I'm just going to make this F1. I'm going to bring in an envelope MIDI in here. MIDI effects, envelope MIDI. And I'm going to bring in an arpeggiator. And I'm going to change the mode of the arpeggiator to be free, to be not locked to the grid. And I want a situation where as this envelope opens, it makes this time longer. So I'm just going to do that like that. It'll be something like that. I'm going to add that to there. And I want that to be unipolar. Is it doing it? Oh, this is triggering so much we can't even tell. Let's change this back to something like this. Yeah. So now I want to use some more MIDI envelopes in here to add to those VCA and VCF situations. So let's add an envelope MIDI in here. Make sure the sustain is down. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to change it to unipolar in both of these. I'm going to change this to 100. I'm going to map those onto there. So the VCF is going to go there, and the VCA is going to go there. Okay. I need a note length in here because again we need to make it, there we go. Maybe I don't want a latch, I just want to be able to control the length. Yeah, this is still happening way too often. Yeah, nice. It could go up a little bit slower and a little bit longer. There we go. This is nice. Okay, maybe I want to actually also do this so I can change the subdivisions of this. I think that would be nice. Let's do that same process. So I'm just going to bring in a velocity in here. I'm going to group it. I'm going to create a chain. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to maybe just make this go up to 4. I'm going to bring in an expression control increment. I'm going to open up the chain selector. Right click, map to macro 1. Change the range. Lovely. And now we change this to 4. We're going to set that to here. And we're going to map that to here. Yeah. Nice. So now this is only going to happen 1 out of every 4 of those subdivisions. Cool. Super nice. So this is the basics behind building this rack. You saw I did a hell of a lot of mapping of macros. That was to make it all really performable. If I open it back up again here, we can see a lot of macros open here. Let's turn it back on. To make it super performable, I made it really easy to control the filter envelopes, the filter cutoff and the filter resonance. Lovely. Easy to access things like whether the trigger is on or off for oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. So now oscillator 1 is now not stepping through the sequence. Those 3 notes are going to keep staying the same. Bring it back on. Turn the bouncer on and off. Bouncer subdivisions. You can see what's happening here. Make it easy to change the pitch sequence of each of the things that are going on. I added this little Reverb gate rack at the end. Tutorial about that that I made quite some time ago. Link in the description below. And I made this little spacey effects rack. That's a combination of you have a vocoder, an EQ8, and then a spectral blur, a couple of spectral blurs, and a distortion. So we get these kind of effects happening in the background. So that's the rack. That's building a Subharmonicon style sequencer inside of Ableton. Don't forget, you can download this entire rack, make your own stuff with it. It's super performative, super easy and intuitive to get your way around. The way I made the track from my album was to just set this up and just perform with it. Turning triggers on and off, bringing the volumes of the individual oscillators up and down. Playing with the decays, the depth. As I said, I made it on the actual Subharmonicon, but this was basically the approach that I took. Found a starting point, explored it, and ended at some point. Super nice to have you here today. Hope you got something from this tutorial. Drop a link in the description if you're making stuff. Tag me. I would love to hear what you guys are up to. See you next week.